Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. The year was 2173 and Earth had long become a memory beneath a shroud of toxic clouds and ruin. What once was a vibrant sphere teeming with life now floated precariously in the abyss of the long-abandoned surface. Humanity's salvation had become a series of sprawling, buoyant cities drifting in the stratosphere. These marvelous cities hung like giant lanterns suspended by intricate systems of anti-gravity technology and structural balloons filled with lighter-than-air gases, tethered neither by land nor water but only by the thin breathing air above the poisoned sands. Centuries of environmental collapse, relentless wars, and technological hubris had forced humanity skyward. The surface was deemed uninhabitable, a graveyard of mutated plants and endless rusting skeletons of machines. The floating cities, Arcadia, Zenith, Helios, and Nimbus, became sanctuaries. They were radiant with pulsating neon veins and spiraling towers plunging into the ever-shifting clouds. Inside, humanity reinvented itself under domes of clear alloy shielding the air and the hope. Life in the upper atmosphere was a strange fusion of organic and synthetic, mid-air farms intertwined with AI guardians that protected society from the perils below and within. Valen Riker was among the most contemplative citizens of Arcadia, the first city built in the heart of the atmospheric civilization. At 28, with a lean frame wrapped in the standard silver weave of atmospheric explorers, Valen bore the scars of longing, an ache buried deep beneath his eyes. Unlike many of his peers who looked upward, always reaching for the higher, the farther, the better technology, Valen's gaze was fixed downward, toward the abandoned broken world below. To most skyborn, the Earth's surface was a forbidden graveyard of humanity's folly, a place of death, dust, and madness. Stories told in school warned of the lethal radiation, errant storms of acid rain, and rogue mutants lurking in the radioactive wildlands. The consensus was unanimous. The surface was a tomb, and no one must ever return there. Those who ventured downward voluntarily were branded outcasts or worse, pariahs descended into madness or cursed by the old Earth. But Valen was different. He did not want to live suspended between clouds eternally tethered to technology. His dreams were draped in oceans, soil beneath bare feet, the smell of deep forest moss. And more than the material, he yearned to understand why the surface had been abandoned so completely, what memories it held beneath the crust of rot and silence. A flickering holoscreen projected a trio of moons orbiting Earth, spinning slowly over a panoramic window opening at the heart of Arcadia's observation chamber. Valen stood before it, waiting for his clandestine contact. His fingers danced nervously over the console, sending encrypted signals through the city's net, a web of data unseen by even the watchful sky governance. After what seemed an eternity, a figure appeared projected mid-air, a woman draped in a cloak of shadows. Her aliases were many, but Valen trusted her name, Mira. She was a rogue archaeologist who smuggled relics and forbidden knowledge out of the surface ruins. Mira whispered of ancient libraries buried beneath the crust, vaults of lost information, and even hints of survivors. "There is a way," Mira said softly. "An ancient shuttle buried beneath the western plateau, a relic from before the cities ascended. It's hidden beneath the ruins of New Chicago, intact enough for a descent." Valen's heart raced. New Chicago was a name that lingered in history classes like a ghost. Once a mega metropolis on the surface, it fell to ruin within the first decade after the skybound exodus. Now, it was a myth, a forgotten region twisted by storms and the encroachment of radioactive vines. "The surface is not just wasteland," Mira whispered. "It's waiting for someone to look beneath the ashes." Weeks later, under the flickering neon lights of an underdeck market, A dim corner of Arcadia where contraband flowed noisily, Valen exchanged credits and codes with smugglers who specialized in surface tech. His mind was a mix of anxious hopefulness and fear. To descend was madness or heroism. No Skyborn had attempted it in over a century without lethal consequences. The final hour came under the veil of an artificial night cycle designed to emulate a forgotten sunset. Valen navigated the labyrinthine passages to the city's descent platform, a gated chamber normally reserved for emergency landings. Thanks to Myra's connections and his risky navigation of bureaucratic shadows, the access codes were in hand. The ancient shuttle was a relic indeed. Bundled in chains of carbon fiber cables and dust, it looked both fragile and formidable, a sleek metal silhouette that echoed the dreams of pre-Earth Revolution aeronauts. Its interior was cramped but functional, with cracked control panels that still flickered faintly to life. As the engines hummed, a low vibration thrummed through the city's core. The launch bay sealed behind Valen with an industrial hiss. The shuttle detached like a silver pulse from Arcadia's belly, spiraling downward into the thickening layer of clouds. The sensation was both liberating and constricting, like slipping from a dream yet plunging into the unknown abyss. The atmosphere outside grew heavier with every mile descended. The shield generators hummed feverishly, pumping filtered air into the cabin while the ancient navigation systems glitchingly aligned to pre-sky coordinates. Outside, the metallic future blurred into a grim landscape of broken steel, crumpled concrete, and tangled overgrowth. Hours later, the shuttle pierced the last boundary between sky and surface with a trembling touchdown in the skeletal remains of New Chicago. Valen exhaled into the hissing enclosure, his feet touching ground that no Skyborn had trod in generations. The air was thick, tinged with decay, but breathable, thanks in part to a thin green haze of nascent regrowth. He stepped through the cracked hatchway, visor lifting against the dim glow of a setting sun obscured by heavy clouds. The city around him was a cathedral of disintegration. Skyscrapers lay toppled or wrapped in rust, trees clawed through concrete like ancient sentinels reclaiming their territory. Muted winds whispered through empty streets as if recalling the echoes of millions who once walked there. Valen's first breath of surface air brought pungent relief mixed with alien despair. Every step felt monumental. Beneath his boots, the ground pulsed faintly with traces of bioluminescent moss. A thin mist wrapped around the ruins like a shroud. Somewhere in the distance, the guttural cries of surface beasts echoed. The world was dangerous, wild, and uninviting. Yet beneath the decay, life breathed stubbornly in stubborn sprouts and grim determination. Valen moved cautiously through the ruins, guided by portable scanners and Myra's encrypted maps. His objective was the Great Archive, a vault rumored to contain records intact since the surface fell. The archive was said to hold the missing chapters of Earth's collapse, fragments lost to atmospheric time. Navigating past unstable bridges of rusted steel and crumpled roadway chasms, Valen ventured deeper into the heart of New Chicago. Towering above was the shattered monolith of the old Civic Dome, its glass shell cracked but still faintly reflecting the dull orange sky. The archive was beneath its foundations, a repository built underground to survive the initial cataclysms. Inside the dim corridors of the archive, illuminated by the flickering light of his lantern, Valen encountered technology long vanished from the skies. Ancient servers pulsed faintly with power, and digital scrolls awaited cataloging. Dust blanketed everything but did not choke the knowledge. Hours of painstaking work turned into days as Valen downloaded fragments of history. Audio logs, video diaries, ecological data, genetic archives, all remnants of a desperate civilization that once believed it could endure the surface even as it decayed. One data archive bore a personal message etched into the digital ether. It was a transmission from an engineer named Elena Ko, one of the last known surface survivors. Her voice trembled with urgency and regret. She spoke of a final attempt to heal the planet through bioengineering nanites and atmospheric correction systems. But the project was sabotaged by factions fearing loss of control, and the cities ascended while she and a small few remained below, tasked with monitoring the surface's gradual revival. For those that choose to survive above, this is a warning, Elena's voice crackled. The surface will awaken, but it requires care and patience. It is not dead, merely dormant. There is hope beneath the rot. We are watching, waiting for when humanity can return. Valen stood in silence as the weight of history washed over him. The surface was not the forbidden zone of ruin and oblivion but a crucible of rebirth. The drift cities had fled their failures, embracing suspension rather than stewardship. His resolve hardened like tempered steel. Emerging from the archive, Valen felt the raw pulse of the land beneath his fingertips. The winds carried distant sounds of creatures once feared but now survivors. Validation of life beyond technology. He mapped communication signals and planted beacons to report surface conditions back to Arcadia's central hub. He knew the Skyborn authorities would hear his trespasses as heresy. But he no longer cared. The truth was too urgent. Upon his return, Valen was met not with open arms but cold walls. His intervention was branded a violation, an existential threat to the harmony of the orbiting sanctuaries. Councils debated in shadow chambers while Valen was confined to quarters, his evidence confiscated and plans suppressed. Yet the ember of his discovery spread clandestinely through underground networks. Young scientists, explorers, and rogue visionaries whispered of surface revival. Mira visited him in secret, her face alight with a fiery glow. "You have opened a door no one dared knock," she said. "We can be the change humanity needs. The Skylight Agreement cannot be just the sky's dominion. It must be a pact with Earth below." Valen nodded. His journey was just beginning. Together they formed a coalition of surface advocates, hackers, and biologists committed to rehabilitating the scarred planet. They designed drones and terraforming tech to seed forests and purify water. They sculpted visions of humanity's return not as conquerors but as guardians. The surface below was alive, waiting for its children to come home. Years later, amidst blossoming green patches amid the ruins, the first interface stations rose from the wreckage, bridges between the floating cities and the rediscovered lands. They were humble at first, slow footholds of hope. But each spark was proof that the sky was no longer the boundary, but a starting point. And Valen Riker stood atop one such station gazing upward and downward. A man who dared to dream of a home reclaimed in the grace of an uncertain dawn. For more stories, like and subscribe.